"You don't belong here, sir." The words weren't shouted, but they hit like a slap in the face. Eugene Carter looked up slowly from his seat in Lounge A12 at Vancouver International Airport, blinking once behind wire-rimmed glasses. The flight attendant standing over him had sharp features and an even sharper tone. Mid-30s, immaculate navy blazer, tablet tucked under one arm like a badge of authority. Her name tag read K. Whitmore, but the look in her eyes said everything else she thought she needed to say. "This section is reserved for executive elite passengers only," she added, her voice just loud enough for others to hear. "I'll need to see your credentials." Eugene didn't move right away. He looked around, briefly, calmly. A man in a suit nearby paused mid-sip from a branded water bottle. A younger couple glanced up from their tablets. Nobody said a word. He reached slowly into his coat pocket and handed over his boarding pass. The woman barely glanced at it before frowning. "This is business class," she said with a sigh. "That doesn't grant you access to this area. I'll have to ask you to relocate to general seating." Eugene gave a small nod, not of agreement, but of recognition. Recognition of a moment he had lived through too many times before. They didn't know who he was. Not yet. "Tell us where you're watching from. Because this isn't just about a seat. It's about what happens when quiet power is pushed too far." He stood without a word. A slow, careful motion. His right hand gripped the handle of his cane. The left, the strap of a worn leather briefcase. His movements were stiff, not from weakness, but from a spinal fusion surgery he rarely mentioned. He didn't look at the attendant again. He didn't have to. As he walked out of the lounge and into the noise of Terminal D, heads turned, not because of who he was, but because of who they assumed he wasn't. No one offered a hand. No one offered a seat. He found an empty chair near a charging station, nestled between a trash can and a noisy vending machine. A nearby teenager blared music on his phone. Someone's child whined about snacks. Eugene sat down slowly, legs aching. The chair was plastic. Cold. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a small, matte gray device, no bigger than a calculator. It had no apps, no distractions, no fingerprint sensors. It wasn't meant for the public. He pressed one button. A quiet beep. A man's voice answered on the first ring. "East Core Infrastructure. This is Tier 3 operations." Eugene spoke softly, each word as deliberate as his footsteps. "This is Carter. Freeze all Tier 3 assets associated with Northlift Airlines. Lounge access, escrow disbursements, and operational leases. Immediate effect. Delay communication to stakeholders for 9 minutes. Legal and FAA liaison to be alerted simultaneously." "Yes, sir," the voice said. "In motion now." Eugene ended the call. Then, just like that, he placed the device back into his coat pocket, folded his hands over his cane, and looked out at the runway. A jet taxied across the field. Rain pattered softly against the terminal glass. Back in Lounge A12, flight attendant K. Whitmore refreshed her screen and saw nothing amiss. She returned to fussing over champagne glasses and pillows. 3 rows over, a junior manager from Northlift Airlines tapped his badge to enter a secured system. He couldn't get in. In Dallas, the CEO of Northlift was stepping into a glass-walled boardroom with executives from Regal Sky Lounge, ready to finalize a $400 million merger deal that would give Northlift access to 17 new luxury lounges across North America. At minute 4, the lead counsel for East Core would send a memo marked "Ready." Escrow access terminated. All lounge leases revoked. Investigatory alert triggered. At minute 7, FAA compliance would be pinged for audit notification. And at minute 9, exactly as requested, Northlift's operational center would receive a chain of alerts. Lounge license suspension, YVR, JFK, LAX, DFW. 64 premium class flights require rerouting or cancellation. Stock risk flagged. Trading halt likely. But none of that happened where Eugene sat. He was just another old man in a too small chair. A gate agent announced pre-boarding for Dallas. Eugene didn't flinch. He thought about saying something, just one sentence to the woman who dismissed him. but decided against it. That wasn't his way. He remembered his father once saying, "Don't waste breath proving who you are. Let the silence build the echo." So he waited. 9 minutes after he left Lounge A12, the corporate switchboards began to light up like a Christmas tree during a blackout. Somewhere deep inside the system, someone was finally asking, "Who authorized this freeze?" And someone else would say, "It came directly from Carter." And someone would whisper, "Wait, Carter was at YVR today? At our lounge?" But by the time they figured it out, Eugene would already be on the jetway, boarding the very flight they were scrambling to protect. He wouldn't be in business class anymore. The moment the East Core protocol hit the system, no one in the Vancouver terminal noticed a thing. Not at first. Flights still flashed across the big board in orderly rows. People still stood in long lines for coffee. Somewhere near Gate 58, a little boy cried because he dropped his muffin. The world spun, blissfully unaware that $1 billion power structure had just been knocked off balance by an old man with a gray cane and a silent phone. But in Dallas, at North Lift Airlines executive headquarters, the shift landed like a sledgehammer. Room 14B was full, glass walls, leather chairs, screens glowing with market updates and shareholder reports. The CEO of North Lift, Grant Telford, was standing at the head of the table. His tie was loosened just enough to appear casual but calculated. On the screen behind him was a bolded headline: "Merger Finalization, North Lift x Regal Sky Lounge Group, Project Ascend." Next to him sat representatives from Regal Sky, silent, expectant. A junior staffer cracked open the door, stepped in quietly, and slipped a folded printout into Telford's hand. His eyes scanned it once, then again. He didn't blink, but his jaw tightened. "Pause the presentation," he said flatly. His voice dropped half an octave. "We've just lost control of 17 lounge licenses." A murmur rippled through the room. "What do you mean, lost control?" asked the VP of Investor Relations. "I mean," Telford said, tapping the table with the back of his pen, "East Core just froze our entire premium access layer. YVR, JFK, LAX, ATL, gone. Access revoked. Legal assets locked, and..." He held up a second page. "They flagged the FAA." A Regal Sky rep leaned forward. "But we're hours away from closing." "Not anymore," said Telford. "The deal's dead in the water if we can't operate lounges." Back in Vancouver, Eugene Carter sat quietly in seat 3C of the boarding area. He'd been called to the gate early. They told him it was for pre-boarding assistance. He knew better. The gate agent hadn't met his eyes when she handed him a fresh boarding pass. It didn't say business class anymore. It said, "First class, seat 1A." He said nothing, just nodded, and sat. Around him, passengers began filling the area. A few business travelers, a group of college kids, a young family struggling with 2 toddlers and a stroller that wouldn't fold. No one looked twice at Eugene, except for one man, seated a few rows away. Late 40s, neat haircut, dark blue suit. A Bluetooth headset looped around his ear, blinking red every few seconds. He was watching Eugene, not casually, studying him. Inside North Lift's Ops Center in Atlanta, the phones had already started ringing. "Sir, we've lost access to lounges in Tier 1 markets." "What do you mean, lost?" "I mean revoked. Instant freeze. Customers can't check in. Our staff can't even access the terminals." "And who initiated this?" "East Core Infrastructure. Direct override." Silence. Then, "Get me someone in legal, right now." At the same time, FAA Compliance Office in DC lit up with an encrypted alert. Subject: Emergency Asset Freeze, Irregular Vendor Activity Source. East Core Infrastructure. Tier 3 Security Flag, Affected Entity, North Lift Airlines. A junior analyst named Marcus Taylor read it and frowned. He tapped the shoulder of his supervisor. "You should see this." 30 seconds later, the report was being routed to the FAA Director of Commercial Operations. It had only been 7 minutes since Eugene made the call. On the jet bridge back in Vancouver, boarding began. The gate agent stood at the entrance with a tight smile and a furrowed brow. "Mr. Carter," she said softly, "please board first." He nodded. The flight attendant at the aircraft door, not Whitmore, smiled brightly. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Carter," she said. "Please let us know if you need anything at all." Her tone wasn't fake. It was careful. Someone had told her. He walked slowly down the narrow aisle, the thick rubber tip of his cane making quiet taps on the floor. A few passengers watched. Most didn't. Seat 1A sat empty. He settled into it quietly, rested his hands on the armrest, and exhaled. The man in the blue suit from the terminal boarded second. His seat? 1B. He placed a sleek leather bag in the overhead, sat down next to Eugene, then turned slightly to face him. "Mr. Carter," he said quietly, "I work with Regal Sky." Eugene turned, expression calm. "I know. I was at the Dallas table when the freeze came down. You just wiped out our deal." "No," Eugene replied. "I stopped a mistake." The man swallowed hard. "They didn't know who you were. I doubt she even read your name." "That's not the problem," Eugene said, voice low. "The problem is, she didn't care." The man nodded slowly. "Will you reinstate access?" Eugene looked out the window. Rain began to tap softly against the plexiglass. "I don't make decisions in anger," he said. "But I don't reverse them in silence either." In Chicago, headlines began circulating among industry insiders. Northlift merger stalls after sudden asset freeze. East Core disrupts lounge network in unprecedented move. FAA to review airline ethics standards after Carter Protocol triggered. Back on the plane, Flight 2406 was preparing for departure. The cockpit door opened briefly. A co-pilot stepped out, said something quietly to the lead flight attendant, then glanced at 1A. The moment passed, but the cabin felt it. Something had shifted. No announcement had been made. No fanfare. No scolding speech. But from the way the crew avoided eye contact with seat 1A, from the sudden hush around row 1, it was clear. Word had spread. At the very back of the plane, Flight Attendant Kay Whitmore sat on the crew bench, flipping nervously through her tablet. Error messages blinked in red across several service tabs. She tried to log into the lounge dashboard. Access denied. Tried again. Still locked. Her supervisor pinged her with a message. "Report to compliance upon landing. Incident filed." She didn't know it yet, but her name was being included in the internal review report titled Guest Relations Breakdown, Carter Protocol Activation. Meanwhile, Eugene Carter sat quietly, reading the safety card like it was a habit, not a necessity. To the world around him, he was just a man in 1A. But behind that stillness, entire systems were unraveling. By the time Flight 2406 reached cruising altitude, Grant Telford was on his third phone call and second cup of black coffee. His voice was tight. "Get them back on the line," he barked into his Bluetooth headset. "I don't care if the East Core office is in session. This isn't a scheduling issue. It's a system collapse." He was pacing the length of a private meeting room in Dallas, the windows behind him filled with gray afternoon sky. The Northlift board had been called into emergency session. No lunch, no pleasantries, just panic. On the table in front of them were printouts and projections, most of them drenched in red ink. 64 flights disrupted. $48 million in projected losses by EOD. Investor inquiries pending. FAA contact flagged watch list. And worst of all, a public relations blackout with East Core. They had tried to call Eugene Carter, tried to reach someone, anyone, inside East Core's legal team. No response. Only one sentence had come back, delivered by a personal assistant through a generic line. "Mr. Carter is unavailable. He is in transit." That was all. And yet, the market was already reacting. Stock dip, speculation, rumors flying across aviation blogs and LinkedIn threads. Who is Eugene Carter? East Corps freezes $400 merger over seating dispute? Flight attendant triggers catastrophic retaliation? Telford threw the latest printout onto the table. This shouldn't have happened, he said, jaw tight. You said he was nobody. The VP of Corporate Relations looked like he hadn't slept in a week, though it had only been 2 hours. He was listed as a business class passenger, the VP said. Not in our system as a VIP. No tags, no alerts, no red flags. That's the problem, Telford snapped. A man like Eugene Carter shouldn't need a red flag. You think a guy who owns access rights to half our lounges needs to wear a special pin to be treated like a human being? No one answered, because they all knew the truth. They hadn't failed because of a technical glitch. They'd failed because someone saw an old man sitting alone and assumed he didn't matter. Meanwhile, in the rear galley of Flight 2406, Kay Whitmore sat rigid, tablet pressed against her lap like a shield. The supervisor had already spoken to her once. We'll need to debrief you upon landing, she'd said. Compliance requested a full incident report. Whitmore had nodded, but she didn't ask any questions. She couldn't. Her mind was spinning. Why had the gate agent suddenly upgraded Carter to 1A? Why did the lead flight attendant start using the word Mr. like he was royalty? Why did the co-pilot check on him before takeoff? And then there were the messages. Her access panel had gone dark mid-flight. Lounge system, locked out. Crew portal, restricted. A blinking alert. Internal flag, incident code, East Corps. She didn't even know what that meant. But the way everyone was walking on eggshells now, it scared her more than if someone had yelled. She glanced toward the front of the cabin. She couldn't see 1A from here, but she felt it. The gravity around that seat, like the nose of the plane tilted toward it. Back at FAA headquarters in Washington, D.C., 2 senior officials gathered in a closed meeting room marked Aviation Ethics and Compliance. A fresh report sat on the table between them. Subject: Eugene Carter's source, East Corps infrastructure. Incident level, Tier 3 activation cause, discriminatory interaction onboard Flight 2406, Vancouver to Dallas. Status: verified. Recommended action: temporary pause on North Lift expansion certification. Formal inquiry into airlines' passenger treatment protocols. The older of the 2 men, Director Samuel Grant, rubbed his forehead. Carter rarely escalates, he said. Last time he pulled a Tier 3, it was for a pilot that abandoned a disabled veteran during a gate change in O'Hare. That one cost Aerosky $12 million in settlements and a full retraining program. His colleague nodded. Think we'll need to issue a statement? Grant sighed. I think we'll need a lot more than that. Back on Flight 2406, the mood had shifted. Not in words, but in posture. The crew moved differently, slower, more careful. They double-checked everything in row 1. Made sure the water was cold, the napkin folded just so. The passenger in 1B, still seated next to Eugene, hadn't taken out his laptop since takeoff. He kept his hands still, his body turned ever so slightly toward the window. Finally, he cleared his throat. Sir, he said quietly, may I ask you something? Eugene looked over, eyes steady. The man continued. What made you do it? The freeze. The system's in free fall. People are getting fired already. Eugene didn't answer right away. He looked ahead toward the curtain that separated first class from the rest of the plane. Then he spoke. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it because someone forgot that power isn't always loud. The man nodded slowly. Then, quieter. You could have screamed. You could have embarrassed her. I'm not interested in shame, Eugene said, only in correction. He returned to silence. At Northlift's HR division, 3 compliance officers had already begun pulling footage from Lounge A12. The video was grainy, but it was clear. A flight attendant standing over an older man seated near the window, her body language rigid, his posture still. Then, his slow, careful rise, his hand on the cane, his exit. A second later, the manager on duty walked by and waved a family into the seats just vacated. None of them offered him a glance. None of them looked back. A compliance officer leaned in and muttered, "This is going to live online forever." In the final hour of the flight, the intercom buzzed briefly before going silent. No announcements, no turbulence, just air, just tension. Then, a quiet voice through the PA system. "This is your captain. Just a reminder. This is not only a flight to Dallas, it's a lesson at 30,000 feet. Eugene didn't smile, but he did lift his chin. Because somewhere between Vancouver and Texas, the world had changed just a little, and no one had seen it coming, especially the ones who thought he didn't belong. The landing in Dallas was smooth, one of those rare descents where the tires kissed the runway instead of slapping it. Eugene Carter barely moved as the plane touched down. Seat 1A gave him the legroom he needed, but it wasn't comfort he'd come for. It was closure. Around him, the other passengers stirred. Seatbelts clicked open. Cell phones lit up. The rustle of jackets, the polite murmurs of, "Excuse me," and the shuffle toward the aisle all began like clockwork. But no one rushed past Eugene. In fact, they waited. The young man in 1B stepped back and motioned for Eugene to go first. "After you, sir," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. Eugene didn't respond with words, just a nod. And then he stood, straightened his coat, and stepped into the aisle. The flight attendant standing near the exit, not Whitmore, smiled gently. "Mr. Carter," she said, "thank you for flying with us. We hope to see you again soon." She meant it. You could hear it in her voice. As Eugene stepped off the plane and into the jet bridge, he was greeted not by a gate agent, but by two people in suits. One held a clipboard, the other, a tablet. "Mr. Carter," the woman said, extending a hand. "Welcome to Dallas. I'm Michelle Sampson, Public Liaison for East Corps Regional Operations. We've arranged private ground transport, and the FAA has requested an optional debrief. You are, of course, not obligated." "I'm not in the mood for meetings," Eugene replied gently. "Understood," she said. "We've also arranged a holding room should you wish to rest before your next engagement." Behind her, a black town car waited at the end of a private corridor. No press, no flashing cameras, just silence and respect. Across the city, the FAA held a press briefing at their Dallas regional office, a backdrop of navy blue with the agency's seal. Microphones clustered like metal flowers on a podium. Reporters gathered, live streams running. The spokesperson stepped forward and read from a typed statement. Following multiple Tier 3 protocol activations by East Corps infrastructure and internal ethics complaints filed against Northlift Airlines, the FAA is launching a formal investigation into potential violations of passenger treatment standards and discriminatory conduct by licensed crew. The room buzzed. "Is this related to the incident at Vancouver?" "Yes." "Is the passenger involved?" "Eugene Carter." The spokesperson didn't blink. "We do not comment on ongoing investigations. However, we can confirm that the individual in question holds senior executive authority over critical airport infrastructure in the United States and Canada. His experience and the nature of this incident require urgent review." At Northlift headquarters, the walls were closing in. CEO Grant Telford sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loose, hair a mess. His eyes were locked on a news ticker scrolling across his muted television. "FAA to investigate Northlift ethics violation. $400 million merger frozen." He turned to his chief legal officer. "Do we know who flagged the FAA?" The man nodded grimly. "It came directly from Carter's office. Same channel he used in 2018 during the Aerosky investigation. It triggered an automatic compliance review." Telford leaned back, rubbing his temples. "This is going to cost us more than money." He wasn't wrong. That morning alone, 4 institutional investors pulled back from Northlift's Class A shares. 2 board members asked for a private session, and Regal Sky officially terminated the merger negotiation, citing operational instability and reputational concerns. Back in Dallas, Eugene sat alone in a quiet executive lounge. Not North Lifts, of course, but a private East Core suite, tucked behind security checkpoints most people never even knew existed. He wasn't eating, just sipping black coffee, looking out a floor-to-ceiling window at the apron where planes taxied in long, slow arcs. His briefcase rested by his foot. The steel gray phone inside hadn't rung. It wouldn't, because Eugene didn't act for attention, and he didn't need confirmation that the system was shaking. He could feel it in the stillness. In a cramped back office inside North Lift's Vancouver operations wing, Kayla Whitmore sat at a desk she hadn't used in months. A folded envelope lay in front of her. Internal. Notice of suspension. Pending review. She'd already read it 3 times, but the words still looked foreign. Like someone else's story had slipped into her life and taken over. Her clearance was frozen. Her upcoming schedule cleared. And the video had leaked. Not to the public, not yet, but to enough people inside the airline to make her avoid eye contact in the hallway. Enough for someone to mutter, "She's the one," as she passed by the cafeteria. She wanted to explain, to say she was just following protocol, that she didn't know who he was. But deep down, she knew the truth. It shouldn't have mattered who he was. In a shareholder webinar that evening, Northlift executives tried to do damage control. One analyst asked the question no one wanted to hear. Do we have any plan to recover credibility after being publicly rebuked by a man who controls 17 of our most profitable airport lounges? Silence. Then Telford spoke. We are in communication with East Core. But he wasn't. No one was. Because Eugene Carter hadn't returned a single call. And that silence was louder than any press release they could write. Just before sunset, Eugene stepped out onto the curb outside the East Core lounge. The same black town car waited. He didn't rush. He didn't even look tired. A young employee, mid-20s, maybe an intern, opened the door for him. "Sir," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" He turned, curious. She hesitated, then said, "They said you never raised your voice, that you just stood up and everything fell apart. Is that true?" Eugene gave her a small smile. "Not everything fell apart," he said, "just the part that needed to." The East Core building didn't look like much from the outside. Gray stone, flat roof, no signage on the front, no fountains, no flags. Just a small bronze plaque near the door that read, "East Core Infrastructure, Access Through Design." Most people who walked past it in downtown Kelowna thought it was a law office or a real estate holding firm. That was exactly how Eugene liked it. On Wednesday morning, 2 days after the freeze, Eugene stepped out of the elevator onto the executive floor. No fanfare, just the soft hum of glass doors opening. The receptionist stood as soon as she saw him. "Mr. Carter," she said quietly. He gave a gentle nod. As he walked past her desk, a dozen heads looked up from cubicles and conference rooms. Some stood, others just straightened in their chairs, instinctively, not because he demanded it, because he never had to. Inside the boardroom, the mood was heavy. It wasn't fear, it was anticipation, the kind that settles over a team when something irreversible has already happened, and they're waiting to see what it means. The room filled slowly. Legal, operations, investor relations, aviation partnerships, regulatory affairs, all high level, all seasoned. No one said a word until Eugene sat down. He didn't open a folder, didn't clear his throat, just placed a single sheet of paper in front of him. Blank. Then finally, from across the table, Elena Rios, VP of Ethics and Aviation Policy, leaned forward. "We reviewed the footage, sir," she said. "It was worse than we expected." Eugene didn't look up. "We've had 5 other complaints filed in the last 48 hours from passengers describing similar dismissals from the same airline. Not as visible, but same tone, same disregard." Another executive, Greg Holmes, Director of Strategic Operations, added, FAA's Ethics Division has requested to consult with us on a joint framework. They're ready to move if we set the standard. Elena looked at Eugene again. We need guidance. Quiet's not enough anymore. Still, he said nothing. Just tapped the blank page with one finger. Once, then again, like a metronome marking time no one else could hear. Finally, he spoke. Sometimes, he said, the system doesn't need a reset. It needs a mirror. They waited. The problem isn't policy, he continued. It's permission. People have been allowed to forget how to treat others. They've been taught to scan badges before looking someone in the eye. Silence. Then he picked up a pen and wrote 5 words at the top of the page. Flight Dignity Protocol, Draft 1. And just like that, the room shifted. By noon, 3 departments were in motion. A cross-functional team began assembling real-world case studies, incidents, testimonies, even footage that had never made it to press. Another team built a scoring matrix, mapping airline performance against treatment of elderly passengers, veterans, disabled travelers, and non-English speakers. Legal reviewed East Corps' existing lease clauses and found 17 contract points where dignity-based terms could be inserted immediately. By 2:20 p.m., Elena returned with a printout labeled FDX, Framework, Phase 1 Implementation. Eugene reviewed it in silence, then made one edit with a pencil. He crossed out the word recommend, wrote require. Back in Vancouver, the ripple effects were reaching the front line. North Lift issued an internal memo titled Behavioral Guidelines for Passenger Interaction, Temporary Update. Staff grumbled. Not because of the message, but because it came too late. Kayla Whitmore hadn't returned to work. Her locker was cleared, her schedule frozen. HR had offered her optional offboarding. The moment the footage had reached internal comms, her name was tied to it, not as a person, but as a symbol. The system was changing, and it had chosen her as the example. By Thursday morning, a story broke on a quiet aviation policy blog. East Corps developing flight dignity protocol. New era in passenger ethics? It didn't trend, didn't go viral, but it landed in the inboxes of every major airline CEO in North America. And when they opened it, they saw one thing. Any airline utilizing East Corps lounge or gate infrastructure will, effective immediately, be required to sign and comply with the Flight Dignity Protocol, FDP. Non-compliance may result in temporary or permanent loss of access. In the East Corps lounge in Chicago O'Hare, a flight attendant paused before turning away an elderly man in a faded Air Force cap. She didn't ask for a boarding pass, didn't call a supervisor. She simply looked him in the eye and said, "Welcome in, sir." Because someone had told her what happened in Vancouver. And more importantly, someone had told her what happened after. Back in Kelowna, Eugene stood by the window of his office as the sun slipped low behind the hills. His coat was still draped on the back of the chair. His cane leaned quietly by the window. He sipped tea, not coffee. His assistant entered, holding a white envelope. "Press inquiry," she said. "They want a quote about the protocol." Eugene raised an eyebrow. She smiled. "Should I tell them no comment?" He nodded, then turned back to the window. Because this wasn't about the press. It was never about going viral. It was about who gets to feel small and who finally doesn't. The official launch of the Flight Dignity Protocol wasn't a televised event. It didn't have a dramatic countdown, no orchestra, no fireworks, just a PDF. One simple document, 10 pages long, sent by direct courier to 21 major airlines across North America and Europe. The message was clear. Beginning March 1st, all airlines operating within East Corps infrastructure must adopt and implement the Flight Dignity Protocol, FDP. Failure to comply will result in a phased withdrawal of lounge, gate, and credit access. There were no threats, no harsh rhetoric, just consequences stated plainly. At first, the airline stalled. Some wanted more time. Others wanted legal reviews. A few hoped EastCore was bluffing. But within 72 hours, something changed. Sky Channel Airlines was the first to sign. Their CEO, under quiet pressure from investors, issued a statement. "We believe dignity shouldn't be optional. We are proud to join EastCore in leading the industry toward better standards." That quote made it to every terminal screen in JFK, LAX, and Heathrow within a day. Then came VistaJet, then Silverwing, then Norquest, all lining up like dominoes. Each new signature added momentum. By week's end, 17 of 21 airlines had signed. The other 4, they weren't saying no. They were just trying to survive the public pressure until they could say yes without looking like they were forced to. But everyone could see through it. The flight dignity protocol didn't read like a legal threat. It read like a mirror. It asked simple things. A seat should be honored when booked, especially for passengers with medical needs. A veteran should never have to explain why his uniform still matters. Elderly passengers shouldn't be seen as in the way. No one should be treated based on assumptions from clothing, accent, or status. Each item was followed by a real-world case, anonymized but painfully familiar. Whitmore's incident wasn't listed by name, but everyone knew it was there. The industry press latched on fast. EastCore forces ethics reform across airline sector. The Carter Doctrine, dignity as infrastructure. One man, one call, one standard. The narrative was irresistible, because it wasn't just about a policy change. It was about a power shift. 2 weeks later, the annual International Aviation Summit convened in Seattle. Held at a glassy downtown convention center, the summit usually focused on market trends, AI scheduling algorithms, and carbon offsets. But this year, the tone was different. For the first time, the opening keynote wasn't delivered by an airline CEO. It was given by Elena Rios, EastCore's VP of Ethics and Aviation Policy. She took the stage, stood beneath a screen that simply read, "Dignity is infrastructure," and began. "This isn't about rules. It's about memory, about how our industry forgot the difference between customers and cargo, between scanning a boarding pass and seeing a person." She spoke for 6 minutes. No slides, no sales pitch. When she stepped off stage, the room was dead silent. Then the applause began. Not thunderous, but steady, respectful. Some clapped with hands, others with eyes. At the back of the room, seated quietly among regulators and board members, Eugene Carter watched without moving. He hadn't asked to speak. He hadn't submitted remarks. He just showed up. That was enough, because his presence said what no microphone ever could. After the session, CEO Grant Telford of Northlift approached the EastCore table. His tie was tighter than usual, his voice was softer. "I've reviewed the updated protocol," he said. "We'd like to sign." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Voluntarily?" Telford nodded. "Absolutely." She didn't smile, just handed him the folder. He signed, then glanced toward Eugene. "I never said thank you," he added quietly. Eugene looked at him for a long moment, then said, "That's because it wasn't about me." Meanwhile, in a quiet wing of Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, a new lounge was unveiled. No champagne ribbon cutting, no red carpet, just a bronze plaque at the entrance. This space operates under the Flight Dignity Protocol, in honor of those who rise quietly. Inside, near the far wall, a framed photo hung in silence. Eugene Carter walking down a jet bridge alone, back straight, coat buttoned, cane in hand. No caption, no spotlight, just a moment, preserved in stillness. In the days that followed, internal training modules were rewritten. Staff orientations across multiple airlines began with a new line. "You may not know who they are. That doesn't mean they don't matter." Crew members spoke quietly among themselves. That's the guy from the lounge video. He didn't yell. He just made it happen. "I don't want to be the next headline." But behind all of that, fear, reverence, resolve, there was something deeper. A shift. The kind of shift you don't see on paper, but you feel in posture, in tone, in the way someone hands you a glass of water or opens a door. Something had changed, and not just in the air. Back in Kelowna, Eugene sat by his window as the late afternoon light cut across his office floor. He wasn't watching the news. He didn't need to. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. All 21 signed. He looked at it for a long moment, then powered the phone off. Because some messages don't need replies, they just need to land. 2 months had passed. The headlines had moved on, but the echo hadn't faded. Not in airports, not in lounges, not in classrooms, boardrooms, or coffee shops. Because something rare had happened. Not a scandal, not a crash, not a meltdown, but a shift, but a reset of expectations. And at the heart of it wasn't a lawsuit or a press conference. It was a man. At Greenhill High School, nestled in the suburbs outside Calgary, a quiet assembly was in session. It wasn't your usual pep rally. No cheerleaders, no mascot. Just rows of students, some half-interested, others scrolling phones, until Principal Davies stepped up. He didn't start with announcements. He started with a story. There was a man. He sat in seat 1A on a plane from Vancouver. An airline staffer humiliated him. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He made one call. 9 minutes later, everything changed. The room quieted. Phones were lowered. Eyes turned forward. That man didn't fight to be seen. He reminded the system why it needed to see. That's what real strength looks like. That's the kind of adult I hope you all become. The story wasn't viral anymore, but it was foundational. East Corps' Flight Dignity Protocol had been adopted by 31 airlines and counting. But it didn't stop there. A hotel chain rebranded its guest support model Dignity First. A rideshare platform added a new respect rating filter for passengers and drivers. Even a national grocery store chain began retraining staff using the Carter model, a phrase no one trademarked, but everyone used. No one invited Eugene Carter to those conversations. They just happened because of him. In Ottawa, the National Service Ethics Commission met for their quarterly review. On the agenda, nominations for the Human Dignity in Public Systems Award. The chair of the committee, an aging civil servant named Helen Miles, read the first name aloud. Eugene Carter, former Deputy Commissioner, East Corps, retired, current consultant. A pause, then murmurs of approval. Someone added, "He didn't submit this himself, did he?" Helen smiled. "He didn't even know it exists." But 13 independent letters came in, from 5 provinces, one from a middle school librarian in Nova Scotia. The vote was unanimous. Meanwhile, back in British Columbia, 3 former passengers who had been in the Maple Lounge that day met again. Not by plan, by coincidence. They were all standing in line at a cafe inside Kelowna International when they locked eyes. One was a nurse named Grace. One, a retired bus driver named Peter. The third, a tech consultant from Toronto, Janice. After that awkward double-take and chuckle, they grabbed coffee and sat by the window. The conversation was gentle at first. Flights, delays, schedules. Then Grace said it. "You remember him? The man from 1A? Peter nodded. Didn't say a word, but made the whole building pause. Janice smiled. "I told my niece about him. Told her not all heroes wear capes. Some carry canes and wear wool coats." They sipped their coffee in silence for a beat. Then Grace pulled something from her purse. A folded napkin. Scribbled on it in pen. "Don't raise your voice, raise your presence." She had written it down the day she saw Eugene walk past the boarding gate. "I've kept this since then," she said. "It reminds me not to meet fire with fire, but with quiet certainty." At a private reception in downtown Vancouver, East Corps' founder stood at a podium. Behind him, a soft banner read, "Legacy of Service." He raised his glass. "To Mr. Eugene Carter, who didn't just serve the public, but taught us how to serve it better." The applause was long. Eugene wasn't there. He didn't know the event was even happening. He was at home, gardening. Across the country, in a quiet church in Halifax, a Sunday school teacher shared a story with her students. There was a man who got told to move because people thought he didn't belong, but he knew exactly who he was. And he didn't need to prove it, because truth doesn't shout. The children listened, not because they understood it fully, but because the room felt still. Even they knew it was a sacred kind of power. The media had moved on, but dignity had moved in. And the man from 1A, he never gave interviews, never wrote op-eds, never said, "I told you so," but his presence kept echoing. In every airline training room where a new employee is told, "You might meet a Eugene Carter, you won't know it's him, so treat everyone like it is." In every executive boardroom where someone raises a hand and asks, "Are we building for profit or for people?" And in every small moment, when a crew member bends to pick up a passenger's dropped ticket, offers a smile to someone anxious, or slows down long enough to say "sir" or "ma'am" with meaning, those were the ripples. And ripples don't end. Back in Kelowna, Eugene sat in his study, reading a letter from a teenager in Montreal. The handwriting was uneven. The message was steady. "Mr. Carter, I don't know you, but I saw a video, and I want to grow up to be that calm when people try to make me small." He folded the letter carefully, slipped it into a drawer, lit the lamp by the window. The light spilled out into the dusk. A quiet signal that you don't need volume to be heard, just gravity. The room was too quiet for a corporate hearing, but this wasn't just another corporate hearing. It was the final public ethics review of Northlift Airlines' misconduct case, held at the Aviation Oversight Council in Toronto. The session had been open to public observers, and all 300 seats were filled. Media stood against the back wall, silent, pen still. At the center of the room sat Catherine Whitmore, navy blazer, no scarf this time. The same woman who once barked orders at boarding gates now sat motionless, hands clenched under the table. She was no longer employed. She was no longer protected. And she was no longer in control. The chair of the ethics panel, Dr. Helena Dorsey, looked over the rim of her glasses. "Ms. Whitmore, would you like to read your statement?" Catherine hesitated. Her voice caught before it began. She looked toward the second row. The seat was empty. She had expected him to be there. She'd practiced how she'd meet his eyes, how she'd nod, maybe even approach him after, quietly. She imagined it over and over. But Eugene Carter was not in that room, not out of protest, but out of principle. She took a slow breath and unfolded the paper in front of her. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "On March 17th, I failed in my duty as a service professional. I failed to treat Mr. Carter with dignity. I questioned his presence in the lounge. I ordered him to move, and I did so based not on any facts, but on assumption, on prejudice." Gasps didn't fill the room, just stillness. "I understand now that his silence wasn't weakness. It was discipline, and that discipline exposed mine." Her throat tightened. "I'm sorry." Helena waited a moment before responding. "Ms. Whitmore, for the record, you were invited here not only because of the incident, but because of its systemic context. Do you understand that what happened wasn't isolated?" Catherine nodded once. "I do. You represent a culture that this industry must no longer tolerate." The panel's recommendations were unanimous. Catherine Whitmore was permanently disqualified from any customer-facing airline position in North America. Her supervisory credentials were revoked. A public record of her violation would remain accessible to all carriers in the Dignity Compliance Network. But perhaps the sharpest consequence? The silence after her apology. There was no applause, no gasps, just a long pause. Because the man she wronged wasn't there to accept it. Outside the building, a journalist caught up with Helena as she exited. "Why wasn't Mr. Carter present today?" She adjusted her coat. "He declined the invitation." "Did he say why?" She stopped, smiled softly. "He said, Dignity is never something you reclaim from someone else's guilt. It has to come from within. The quote hit the news cycle within minutes. Back in Kelowna, Eugene stood in the shade of a birch tree in his backyard. He wasn't watching the live stream. He wasn't waiting for the apology. He was watering tomatoes, and that moment, an aging man caring for life in silence, was more powerful than any statement in a courtroom. His phone buzzed. A message from Helena. "It's done." She apologized. "It's official." Eugene didn't reply right away. He leaned against the porch railing, eyes fixed on a small robin tugging at the edge of a flower pot. Then he typed, "Thank you. I hope she grows from it." Meanwhile, the clip of Whitmore's apology went viral. Not because she cried, but because someone zoomed in on the empty chair next to the counsel table. The placard read, "Reserved, Mr. Eugene Carter." The shot made its way across the internet with a single caption. He didn't even have to be there. In a podcast recorded that same day, two young black flight attendants shared their thoughts. "I used to think we had to fight for respect," one said. "But now I think sometimes you just have to become undeniable and let the system correct itself when you don't play into its traps." They titled the episode, "The Man Who Didn't Raise His Voice." It trended on Spotify for 2 weeks. Later that evening, Catherine sat alone in her apartment. No media requests, no phone calls, just silence. She turned on the TV, then off again. She looked over at the letter on her kitchen table. It was from a Northlift trainee, someone she'd trained last year. The letter read, "I used to admire how confident you were. I thought that's what professionalism looked like. But now I realize, professionalism isn't power. It's restraint. It's the ability to listen without needing to win. I hope you're finding that version of yourself now." Catherine folded the letter slowly. She didn't cry, but for the first time in weeks, she felt still. Not erased, not vindicated, just still. Like maybe, there was something to rebuild. In a closed meeting later that week, the Northlift board quietly voted to rename their in-flight ethics program. It would now be called the Carter Standard. No plaque, no ribbon cutting, just a silent memo, distributed to all cabin crew, starting with, "Every passenger deserves respect, especially the ones you overlook." Eugene never asked for that, never even knew about it. But his story kept living, not in courtrooms, not on podiums, but in the thousands of private moments where someone chose patience over pride, where someone saw a passenger, not a problem, where someone, somewhere, remembered. Sometimes, the most powerful seat on the plane is 1A. They called it the Carter Standard. It started as a quiet internal memo from Northlift Airlines' HR department. A few bullet points, a signature from the board, and a footer line, "In honor of Mr. Eugene Carter." But within 72 hours, it was no longer quiet. Mid-Air Pacific posted a statement on LinkedIn. "We've adopted the Carter Standard effective immediately across all routes. All flight crews will undergo retraining under the new Dignity First passenger model." It got over 150,000 likes. JetBridge followed. Then Orbit Air. Then Aeronova. By the end of the week, 7 of North America's top 10 airlines had issued press releases stating they were reviewing policies in accordance with Carter ethics. On TikTok, a clip of a flight attendant gently helping an older black man with his luggage went viral. Someone had added a caption that read, "He said, 'I've flown 40 years. This is the first time I didn't feel invisible.'" The comments lit up. "The Carter effect is real. This one made me cry in seat 22B. The world don't need more rules, just more respect." Somewhere in Vancouver, Eugene had no idea his name had become a standard. He was feeding his neighbor's cat, carrying groceries for Ms. Clara 2 doors down, and reminding his granddaughter to wear sunscreen on her field trip. Life to him was simple, and he wanted to keep it that way. Until he got a letter. It was handwritten, no return address. Inside, a photo of a young flight attendant in uniform, standing proudly with a training badge pinned to her chest. On the back, it read, "Dear Mr. Carter, I'm starting my first flight next week. They told us your story on day one, not as a warning, but as a reminder. I used to think kindness was something you gave when people deserved it. Now I know it's something you offer first. Thank you for being quiet." That silence shook the world. Signed, Melanie H., Flight Attendant, Jet Bridge Air. Meanwhile, at Skybridge Terminal D, Melanie was about to board her third flight of the day. Gate 42 to Boston. A passenger in a tan overcoat approached the counter. He looked disoriented. About 70. No carry-on. Just a paper boarding pass and a worn-out cane. "Excuse me, miss. I think I'm at the right gate, but someone told me this seat might be overbooked." Melanie looked at the name, Harold D. Klein. She scanned the manifest. Sure enough, the system had flagged his seat as standby eligible. Her supervisor leaned in and whispered, "Just tell him to wait. That's what we usually do." Melanie glanced back at Mr. Klein. He was already stepping aside, as if expecting to be dismissed. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way his shoulders drooped. Maybe it was the fact that he didn't even try to argue. Or maybe it was the story of the man in 1A she'd read just 2 nights ago. She tapped the system, reassigned a junior staff member's standby upgrade, and reissued Klein's boarding pass. "Mr. Klein," she said, "you'll be in seat 2A today. Window view." His eyebrows rose. "I thought I was economy." Melanie smiled. "Not today, sir." As he boarded, the supervisor shook her head. "You're too soft." Melanie just whispered to herself, "No, I'm just standard." Later that evening, Melanie recounted the story in a Facebook post. It was brief, just a photo of the sky through the airplane window and one line of text. Dignity doesn't cost the airline, but it pays passengers back for a lifetime. The post reached 1.2 million views overnight. Someone in the comments wrote, "Was this because of Eugene Carter?" Melanie replied simply, "It always is." Back in Kelowna, Eugene's grandson Xavier was watching the news. "Grandpa," he called from the living room, "you're on the TV again." Eugene poked his head in from the kitchen, towel over his shoulder. "Still not dead, I take it." "They're saying the FAA just approved a nationwide training program based on the Carter standard." Eugene shook his head. "I didn't do anything." Xavier grinned. "Exactly why they're listening." That night, Eugene sat by the window with a cup of tea. He stared into the quiet, dark porch light glowing behind him. He didn't want fame. He didn't want headlines. But he did want one thing: that the next man who looked like him, walked like him, aged like him, would never again be told to move. And somewhere over Kansas skies, in seat 2A of a jet bridge flight, an old man looked out the window and smiled. "Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from tonight." This one carries weight. They held the summit in Washington, D.C., inside a quiet FAA conference chamber. No cameras, no grand stage, just a long oval table, 5 airline CEOs, 3 senior FAA officials, and a single chair left intentionally empty. At the head. That chair was for Eugene Carter. "I'm not giving a speech," Eugene had said flatly when he got the invitation. "I don't do speeches, I show up. That's it." But when he arrived, wearing the same olive jacket, the one with the frayed cuffs and loose inner pocket, the room stood still. Howard Liu, FAA chair, reached out his hand. "Mr. Carter," he said gently, "I don't think you know what you've set in motion." Eugene looked at the seat with his name placard. "I didn't set anything," he replied. "The motion was already there. I just didn't stop it." On the agenda, approval of the Carter Standard as an FAA-endorsed training protocol, adoption by Northlift, JetBridge, Orbit Air, Aeronova, and Unity Fly establishment of a Dignity Compliance Council for in-flight complaints. It wasn't just a resolution. It was a reset. But what no one expected, what no one planned, was the moment Eugene finally stood. They had scheduled others to speak, but after the last vote passed and pens hit paper, he slowly rose from his chair. The room fell silent. Even the hum of air conditioning seemed to hush. "I won't say much," he began. He didn't look at the press secretary, didn't glance at the cameras. He looked straight at no one and everyone. "Most of you didn't grow up in Mississippi," he said, "but I did." His voice was quiet, even, almost like he was remembering something from 100 years ago. "Back in '64, I saw a woman get pulled off a bus for not giving up her seat. Not arrested, not warned, just dragged." He paused. A breath passed. "I was 10. I never forgot her face." He looked down at the polished wood table. "Last week, someone told me I started a movement." He shook his head. "No, that lady on that bus started it. I just made sure it didn't stop." Then he turned slightly to the left, to where Caitlin Whitmore's nameplate had once been before her resignation. "And if someone gets fired because they humiliated another person, that's not revenge. It's clarity." Eugene stepped back. That was it. No applause, no tears, just stillness. But the stillness broke 30 seconds later, when FAA Chair Liu stood and placed both hands on the table. "I suggest we name the new training unit at Langley after Mr. Carter." Murmurs of approval followed. Then someone added, "Let's not stop there. Rename the ethics board. Make sure this outlives all of us." And just like that, the old man who never wanted a speech became a standard. Across the country, airline posters quietly replaced fine print disclaimers with a new phrase. "In accordance with the Carter Standard, all passengers are entitled to dignity, not discretion." Even the app notification when checking in began to change. Orbit Air's app now buzzed softly on screen before boarding. Reminder, Carter Protocol active. Kindness is policy. That night, Eugene took the train home. No limo, no press. Just a bag of peanuts from the FAA break room and a folded paper tucked in his coat. It was a thank you note from the young FAA intern who had processed the final vote. He stepped off at the Kelowna platform near dusk. The sky was a shade of blue that didn't need a filter. At the end of the platform stood his grandson Xavier, holding a small cardboard sign. "Welcome home, legend." Eugene narrowed his eyes. "You better fold that before the neighbors see it." Xavier just grinned. "Too late. Mrs. Thompson posted it already." They walked home slowly. No rush, just the steady rhythm of two generations walking in step. Xavier asked, "Grandpa, why didn't you say more?" Eugene shrugged. "Words are like salt. Little's good. Too much ruins the dish." That night, Eugene sat at the same kitchen table he always had. Same chair, same chipped mug. But one thing was different. On the fridge, tacked up by a magnet that said Kelowna Garden Club, was a clipping. A headline. FAA ratifies Carter Standard. Travel will never be the same. Below it, scribbled in pen, "Dignity wins. Finally." And as Eugene turned off the lights and climbed the stairs, he said a quiet sentence, to no one in particular. She'd be proud. Monday morning, the markets opened red. Not because of a war, not because of inflation, but because one company, Northlift Airways, had its soul dragged into the daylight. And it didn't look good. Shares dropped 21% before noon. Two major hedge funds, Holstrom Equity and Bridgeway Partners, pulled out of their 90-mile preferred bond agreements by lunch. The press was brutal. The culture at 35,000 feet. What went wrong at Northlift? Leaked audio suggests pattern of discrimination. Carter Protocol ignored, then embraced. Too late. And in the center of it all, Caitlin Whitmore. The now former in-flight operations chief was cornered outside her gated home by 3 different news crews. She looked like someone who'd aged 10 years in 3 days. Her hair wasn't curled. Her scarf was missing. Her voice was no longer sharp. Do you have anything to say about Mr. Carter, Caitlin? Do you regret what happened? Are you cooperating with the FAA investigation? She didn't answer. She just looked straight ahead. But inside her purse, her fingers clutched something small, a napkin from Flight 82. Crumpled, stained with coffee. Still smelled like that morning. She never threw it away. Back at FAA headquarters, a new email pinged across every airline exec's inbox. Subject: mandatory compliance deadline. Carter Standard. All domestic carriers must submit implementation milestones by next Friday. FAA auditors will begin unannounced cabin evaluations starting Q3. That wasn't a suggestion. It was a signal. This wasn't just an internal cleanup. The industry was being watched. But while boardrooms across the country scrambled, Eugene Carter? He was pulling weeds. On a cloudy Tuesday, a young journalist drove 6 hours from Seattle to the small town of Kelowna. She had tracked down Eugene's address, called 3 times, and got the same answer every time. Not available, and not interested. But still, she came. When she knocked, Eugene opened the door wearing muddy boots, gloves, and a half-tied gardening apron. He didn't look angry. He just looked done. "Sir, I just want 5 minutes." "To do what?" he asked. "To ask why you won't speak. People want to hear from you." Eugene studied her face. She couldn't have been older than 24. Smart eyes, soft hand, expensive shoes, not built for rain. He sighed and stepped out onto the porch. "You want a quote?" "Yes, sir. Something meaningful." He pulled off his gloves. Then he said, "When the house is on fire, some folks grab a hose, others grab a camera. Me? I grab a child." The reporter blinked. He walked back inside. Door shut. Interview over. By Wednesday, his words were on every screen in America. "When the house is on fire, I grab a child." They called it cryptic, stoic, genius. But Eugene didn't care. He was busy fixing a broken garden fence. Meanwhile, Northlift's CEO, Grant Telford, found himself in the hot seat. He was summoned to appear at a Senate Oversight Committee hearing in 10 days. The topics? Alleged failure to report in-flight misconduct, retaliation against whistleblowers, ignoring pre-incident FAA warnings about culture toxicity. And just to make things worse, 2 more former employees came forward. One was a gate agent. The other, a retired pilot who claimed Caitlin Whitmore personally encouraged selective enforcement of visual compliance. Code for, you know who doesn't belong up front. The public started talking louder. Not just black communities, not just veterans, everyone. Even frequent flyers who'd been upgraded over someone else started to wonder, did I benefit from something ugly? Twitter exploded. Mr. Carter didn't say much, and that's what made it powerful. We need more people like Eugene in boardrooms, not just on the plane. This wasn't just about race, it was about respect. But not everyone was happy. A few voices, predictable ones, tried to twist the story. The guy caused $400 million in losses over a seat mix-up. He should have just taken the other seat and filed a complaint. They didn't get it, and they never would. Because what happened wasn't about one seat. It was about what that seat represented. That Friday, a small envelope arrived at Eugene's house. No return address. Inside, a card, white, handwritten. "I failed you. I failed the system, and I failed myself. I hope the new standard holds. It should have been there 20 years ago." Signed, K. Whitmore. He placed the card in a drawer, didn't tear it, didn't frame it, just kept it. Because remorse, when it finally comes, shouldn't be erased. It should be remembered. The world kept spinning. Flights kept flying. But something in the air had changed. Maybe it was softer. Maybe it was cleaner. Or maybe, just maybe, people were finally looking up. The terminal smelled the same. Coffee, antiseptic floors, perfume from duty-free, slightly burnt bagels from gate C9. Eugene Carter stood still. He hadn't been back to this airport in over a year. Last time, he was told to move. This time, no one said a word. He didn't wear anything fancy. No suit, just dark slacks, a weathered brown jacket, and a veteran's cap. Slightly tilted, but everyone saw him. They didn't rush over, didn't shout, but heads turned, eyes softened. Even the TSA agent scanning boarding passes did a double take. She didn't say, "Welcome back." She just nodded, the kind of nod that says, "We know who you are, and what you did mattered." At Gate 12A, boarding began. First class, as always, and Eugene waited until the very end. Old habits die hard. But just before economy boarding was called, a young voice broke through the crowd. "Excuse me, sir?" He turned. A girl, maybe 10, 11, stood beside her mother. She wore a sky blue hoodie and had a book clutched to her chest. Unsung Heroes, Hidden Figures in American History. She pointed to her seat. "I saw your name in this book. You helped change the rules, right? About how people get treated?" Eugene looked stunned. The girl turned to the gate agent. "Can he sit next to me, please?" The agent blinked, glanced at the manifest, and said something quietly into her mic, then nodded. Of course. Eugene walked slowly down the jet bridge. When he reached his seat, 1C, the little girl was already buckled in 1A. She smiled wide. "They told us in school about the quiet flight, how one call changed everything." He chuckled. "It wasn't just one call, sweetheart." "What was it then?" He leaned in slightly. It was choosing not to be quiet, in the right way, at the right time. As the cabin door sealed and the safety demo began, something unusual happened. The captain's voice came over the intercom, but it wasn't the usual robotic welcome. It was different. "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before we begin taxi, I want to take a moment. You may not know this, but seated in 1C is Mr. Eugene Carter. You may have heard his name. You may not. But what matters is what he stood for. Because of him, the way we train our crew is different. The way we listen to complaints is different, and the way we define dignity has finally changed. So if this flight feels a little different to you, more respectful, more human, you've got him to thank." Silence. Then a single clap. Then two. Then the entire plane applauded. Not loud, not dramatic, just honest. Eugene didn't turn around. He just placed his hand on the little girl's book and nodded once. Midway through the flight, a flight attendant, not older than 30, approached with a tray. "Sir, compliments of the captain." A small slice of chocolate cake and a napkin folded neatly on the side, handwritten in blue ink. "We got it right this time. Flight 82, crew of today." After landing, Eugene stepped off the plane. As he walked down the gate corridor, he passed a news sign affixed to the wall. Not a big one, but bold. North Lift Airways. A Carter Standard carrier, respect without exception. He kept walking. Through the terminal, past the shops, the noise, the new faces. He didn't need another salute, didn't want another headline, because the work was never about being seen. It was about making sure no one else was unseen. At baggage claim, a man in a pilot uniform approached. Mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, steady eyes. "Mr. Carter?" "Yes. My father flew with you. Vietnam, 3rd Combat Recon. He said you once saved his life when his chute failed." Eugene didn't speak. He just extended his hand. "He passed in '09, sir, but he always said if I ever met you, I should say thank you." Eugene smiled, then whispered, "Tell him." I kept flying. The pilot nodded and walked away. Eugene turned to leave, and above him, a digital screen flickered with a message. New FAA standard rolled out today. The Carter Protocol required on all domestic carriers. He didn't stop walking. He didn't need to, because justice had already landed. And this time, it wasn't delayed. It arrived quietly, like a man in a brown jacket, with a cap tilted just so, and a silence louder than thunder. Sometimes, the loudest justice doesn't come from shouting. It comes from quiet power. What part of Eugene's story hit you the hardest? Let us know. This is why we tell these stories.